Today's guest is Sean Mabry, storyteller, ghostwriter, copy coach, and author of the upcoming memoir, Penned in Flames, a deeply personal exploration of grief, identity, fatherhood, creativity, and what it means to keep building when life gets heavy. Sean, welcome to Braving the Brightside, my friend. How are you?
I'm good. I should have mentioned that that's a working title. I
Okay.
already know I'm going to change it, so the book will have a different title when it comes out.
Oh, right.
But that's fine for now. I don't
Well,
know what the
first
new
of
title is going to be yet, so that's fine.
all, okay, so this is the working title. Penned in Flames is the working
Yes.
title. Well, it's a great name for a working title. Tell you what.
Mhm.
That's fantastic. How's your day going so far? All right.
That's good. Yeah, I been just a lot of networking, meeting cool new people, so
Yeah.
I'm feeling
Very
chatty.
cool. Love that. That's perfect for this right now.
Yeah.
Your mustache is amazing, by the way. I'm very jealous. I can't do that. Looks fantastic and looks like you're ready for the bright side. First and foremost, and this is just me personally wondering this, what is a copy coach? Because I've read through your whole thing and I was like, well, I don't know what a copy coach is. So walk me through that.
Yeah, so a copy coach is essentially someone who helps you become a better copywriter, and that's something I started doing. When did I start? It would have been like 2021 at the latest. And for me, that was after years working as a copywriter at a pretty high level. And I myself had worked with a lot of copy coaches to get to where I was at then. Um, and so, really bring me their copy every week. And then I would critique it based on, what was working, what wasn't. And then also in both cases, I knew, well, the two groups I was in, I knew which business model they were running. So that was part of
Mhm.
it too, is making sure that like it's doing email marketing versus Facebook ads. Those things work very differently. Like there are things that will work in a Facebook ad that don't work in an email and vice versa. So that's the kind of stuff I would call out and be like, hey, like, be mindful of the platform, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Very cool. I mean, that's like something that I didn't even know existed. So that's fascinating. That's really cool.
Yeah,
You wear a lot of hats, my friend.
I
I know we
do.
talked briefly, very briefly, because it was, like I said, I was super busy in between different things. But going through your story and who you are and what you're doing, you're fascinating, man. That's you're doing a lot right now. So, quick overview for people who don't know you. I know I just kind of gave a brief synopsis of who you are, but why don't you just introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah, so my name's Sean Mabry, as Daniel correctly pronounced. Very grateful for that. And I these days I'm primarily a ghostwriter and author coach. So kind of similar to what I was just saying about copy coaching. Now I'm helping people who want to write the book themselves and giving the juice that I'm able to give my ghostwriting clients. Because a lot of the same, it's the same frameworks, the same tools, the same mindset. I can package and share that in a coaching context without you paying me to write the full book, because that's a very different engagement. Namely, it's more expensive.
Yes.
And also, there are a lot of people that are capable writers and want to write the book themselves, but they need the structure to put their ideas into a book. Like writing a book is not the same thing as, maintaining a Substack, right? Or
Mhm.
writing emails or writing Facebook ads, right? Like I get a lot of people that can write those things perfectly well, and yet the book is different, and they know that. Like they understand that the book is a different animal, and so they need someone to help them bring it to life and make sure it has the structure that a book needs. And as far as how I got into that, um, there's a lot of twists and turns to that story we can dive into. But
Yeah.
um, really, I'm a dyed in the wool writer. It's always been the sort of North Star of my life, and uh, really with the ghostwriting, it's kind of I see it as the ultimate culmination of all the different hats I've worn, because it's business in the sense I'm working with authors and founders and experts who want the book for authority positioning, but also I'm able to bring my literary depth and all the things that I obsessed over, you know, like in high school and college about storytelling and history and all these great things, all the humanities, right? The sort of the
Yeah.
whole tent there. Uh, So yeah, there's, like I said, there's tons of different twists and turns we could dive into there, but that's probably a good overview for now.
It's great. Yeah, I really love, I mean, like you just said, there's a lot of twists and turns in your story, which is life, right? I mean, that's
Mm-hmm.
literally just people's lives. Um, like I said, you've lived in several worlds, fiction, theater. You were in theater, you were an actor, you're
Mm-hmm.
a writer, copywriting, coaching, ghostwriting. Do you, at any point in time through all of that, did you ever struggle trying to figure out, did you ever feel like you had to pick one of those identities to be quote unquote successful?
One identity, no, because I always
Mhm.
saw myself as pursuing dual tracks ever since I got out of college. Because one of the things I learned early on, um, I actually got to meet an author that I really respect named Peter S. Beagle, and he was a very successful fantasy author. And one of his most famous books is The Last Unicorn, which got turned into a movie, animated movie back in the '70s. And I met him at a screening for the movie, and my girlfriend at the time was like, "Oh, this is my boyfriend Sean. He wants to be a writer too, just like you." And I'll never forget what he said, because he just looked at me and said, "You can make a killing in this industry, but you can't make a living." And he was specifically talking about fiction, right? Like writing novels and fantasy like he does. And that it wasn't the first time that had occurred to me, but it was sort of a perfect crystallization of a lot of things I'd noticed over the course of my
Mm,
life. Because um, obviously I studied creative writing in college. I got to meet people in the industry. I got to, I've studied people's careers from afar. And what I noticed is that it's extremely volatile to try to base your, and even in the best of times, right? Like, I mean, seeing right now with Hollywood, like even well-established names are struggling right now behind the scenes. And my my sort of central thesis around that is creative work is always going to have that certain amount of volatility to it, because it's driven by taste, and
mm,
taste is it's both your taste and the taste of the audience, and taste is constantly evolving. It's not measurable and predictable in the same way that a lot of business can be. And so from a very, basically from like my early 20s onwards, I decided, like, all right, I'm going to structure my life so that I have something that's a little bit more solid and stable, um, so that I can be creative in the way I want to be and not have to pin down what I'm doing under commercial pressure. And it's not to say that I don't have any commercial ambitions for my fiction. I do, but I knew I would be prematurely boxing myself in if I said,
mm.
like, this has to be the thing that puts food on my table, which is a
Right,
trap I see a
right.
lot of young creators fall into. Is that's how you end up um, saying yes to things you probably shouldn't, right? And
Yeah.
taking gigs, taking jobs that don't really suit you, but but at least I'm in the industry, right? And so what I eventually landed on for the commercial side of things was copywriting, like I mentioned. And that was what I discovered there, is that actually a lot of the core skills do transfer over quite a bit. And really the common thread throughout all of it is storytelling. Like, many of the best copywriters of all time were expert storytellers. And a lot of them actually study fiction, right? A lot of them I discovered, like, obsess over pulp novels and movies and all these things, where a
Right.
lot of what they end up bringing to their copywriting, they're taking inspiration from the world of fiction. So, so for me, it's like, well, I've got that already, right? And that's already baked in. And now with the ghostwriting, like, part of the pivot there was, for one thing, just a matter of personal alignment, right? Like, I wanted to get back to doing something that connected to, like, at the heart, right? Like, that's why I call it the
Mm,
heart of your story, is that these are the things that are near and dear to my heart. Like, I think stories are sacred. And excuse me. But by that same token, when I look at the landscape now of online business and marketing and branding, with the rise of AI, the thing that there's basically this huge fork in the road, where if you're going to even have a business 5 years from now, you either need to go all in on AI and automation, and just have the most overwhelming amount of volume, right? Like, you're basically
mhm.
competing against slop channels on YouTube,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
all the other places they show up. And it's like, who can produce the most slop fastest? That's how you win that game. And look, if that's what you want to do, power to you. I can't stand the thought of doing that. right?
Yeah, there's no humanity in that.
No, and so the other fork in the road is that what was maybe a nice to have before is becoming table stakes, which is that it's not enough to simply be an expert at what you do, right? And to have a good track record of results. Like, yes, you need those things too. But if that's all you have, the average consumer, even if it's better to go to a human, they're still going to go to a chatbot first,
Right,
or someone
right.
who's willing to, you know, sell them at the very bottom of the price ladder because, supposedly through AI, right? Um, and so the way you get people to invest in your genuine expertise is that you need to become a character in their mind, where it's not just, oh, here's someone who's really knowledgeable about XYZ. It's, wow, this person has lived out the dream that I have. They've actually walked the road I want to walk. And I
Yeah.
can tell that they're real and that they've actually done it because of the specifics of their story. There's so much texture and nuance to their story that even if you could fake it through AI, it would take as much work to fake it as it is go and do the real thing, right?
Right,
So
right.
that's where having a personal brand, like even our definition of what a personal brand is, I think is tightening right now. Like in some sense, that's always been true, everything I just said.
Hmm.
But the emphasis is shifting. Like that's now becoming the thing you have to put front and center, even beyond the sort of obvious like status symbols of like, look how much money I have and look at my Lambo and whatever. Like,
It's that
people are
authenticity
numb to
that
that.
really, yeah, that
Yeah.
you need. Interesting. Are you finding with the rise of AI in terms of not even just copywriting, but also your creative writing, do you think I mean, do you find yourself constantly kind of checking the rearview mirror and being like, oh my God, okay, now they're catching up to this. Now, it's because it's overwhelming at some points.
I did for a little, but the
Hmm.
thing that changed my mind was I started using the tools myself. And I
Hmm.
think this is a, especially back then, because I sort of like watched that wave coming. I always told people, like, those other copy students I mentioned earlier, I would tell them, if you really are afraid of AI replacing you, see if you can replace yourself with AI. Like, go pop open ChatGPT or Claude or whatever, it doesn't
Interesting.
really matter which one,
Yeah.
and see how far you can get in having the machine do what you do. Because first off, you're going to realize how big a leap that is, and and like I said, at a certain point, it's as much work to train the bot as it is to just do the thing yourself.
Yeah.
But also you'll see how, and this is exactly what I discovered, is that at some point it shifted from, let me try to replace myself, to how can this speed me up? And that actually I found really useful. And that's the thing. I use AI to this day. Like, I don't have AI write for me, but I do use it for organizing my thoughts and keeping track of things. And in a sense, having a kind of, a lot of people use either like the second brain. I I take issue with that only in the sense that it implies consciousness, and AI is not conscious, and I think it's important to
Hmm.
remember that. But in terms of having a easily accessible repository of my past thoughts and ideas,
Yes. Yeah.
that isn't that is biased, but it's biased in different ways than I am, right? Like there are
Yeah.
built-in biases
Yeah.
to AI that are, we can talk about it a bit about. But like case in point, this is a really interesting example from just recently. I was putting together a talk for a summit, and it brought in this, because I was like, you're brainstorming like what I want to include, and it brought in this nugget from something I'd written months ago for a completely different group. And I did like just kind of filed that away as like, oh yeah, like that, not really doing anything with that client anymore. Like
Hmm.
I don't, I wasn't even
That's
thinking about this
done.
stuff. Yeah,
Right.
done, move on. But it brought that piece back, and I didn't even recognize it at first. I had to ask, like, wait, where did you find that? Because it does kind of sound like me, but I don't even remember writing it. And it's like, oh, it's from this. I'm like, it actually remembered my memories and reused them in a way that I wouldn't have.
It's a
And I was
wild
like,
statement.
that's interesting.
Yeah.
That is very interesting. And you see how this is a totally different ballgame than like, can you write an email for me? Right?
Right.
Like who cares? Like,
Yeah.
again, unless
Yeah.
the only thing, which I'm not, I don't want to build a business that relies only on volume, because that, um, let me tweak that a little bit. I do think speed of writing is incredibly important. and I've always prioritized being a fast writer,
Mhm.
even before AI, and still am. I am very fast, even without AI. But that's because I look at speed as a forcing function for quality. And so at the end of the day, my ultimate priority is still quality.
Yeah.
But you lose that quality if you're letting the machine take up 80% of the process. Like it's
Or
still,
if you have them start it for you and then you get in there and tweak it or whatever, some people
yeah,
have them write the whole thing out and then
yeah,
tweak it or yeah, and try to make it sound like them.
yeah. Which is another huge lesson I learned. I mean, one of the things, I for about 3 years, I worked with a screenwriting coach who worked on 4 generations of Star Trek. Really sharp dude. His name's Art Holcomb.
I'm glad you brought that
And
up because I was definitely going to bring that up. It's
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I learned so much from him. I still refer back to him constantly because he was such a huge influence on me. And one of the biggest things he taught me is that when it comes to writing fiction, although I think this applies just as well to copy,
Mhm.
is part of your job is to evaluate the idea of what you're going to write before you write a word of it. Because if you have, like, let's say it's a 6 out of 10 idea, you could really scrape and sweat and bleed and polish to get it to a 7. Or you can find an idea that's a 9. And even if you just do an okay job with that, it's already a 9. And if you really sweat and bleed and polish it, you can get it to a 10. And that's the thought process you need to adopt, especially as over the course of your career, is like, and this is, I think, the one of the huge hidden dangers of AI is that AI is really good at convincing you, and AI companies have a vested interest in convincing you that a 6 out of 10 is good enough because you can get a
Mhm.
lot of it really quick. But
Right.
if but a 6 out of 10 is forgettable. It's worse than That's actually more dangerous than doing a 2 out of 10. Because a
Yeah,
2 out of 10
agree.
could at least be memorable, right?
Yeah.
Nobody remembers a 6 out of 10. I care
Yeah.
about being, and like, if you want to have a career 5 years from now, you have to be memorable. There's simply no other, at this point, there's no other way,
At
right?
this
Because
point.
why else would someone choose you over the sea of your competitors?
Yeah. Fascinating. I have a Patreon where I write horror stories on short horror stories. And there was one time where I was running it through ChatGPT. I was like, what is a good segue for this part? I'm like, I'm stuck. Throw me some examples, whatever. And it actually ended up writing a story with it, like completely misunderstood me and wrote the story. And I remember reading it and being like, oh my God, this is it. You are pulling things out. Like you're throwing like so much stuff in here that makes no sense, like has nothing to do with the fabric of my story. Like I was reading it and just kind of getting grossed out. And it was like how shallow and hollow it was. And there was like literally just like you said, slop. It was just these words and statements and action scenes that made absolutely no sense. And like, yeah, it was like, oh my, like it was just upsetting. And it was, took it 15 seconds to write 9 pages of this stuff. And it was just mind numbing how quick it
Yeah,
was. And also just how awful it was, how terrible it was.
yeah.
And you're right. It was like, it wasn't like, it wasn't a 2 out of 10. Like it was just like forgettable. There was nothing.
And case in point, right? You have the good taste to recognize, this is like, even if it sounds similar on the surface, it's not there, right? Like you can feel
Right.
what's missing underneath. And the slot here's the thing about slot merchants is that, and for a certain segment of the audience, they are correct in the sense that there are people that genuinely have no taste at all, and are, their attention spans are short enough that they'll just kind of consume anything.
Was it word salad?
Yeah,
Like they
yeah,
just throw a bunch of things in a bowl and it's just like, yeah, I guess this is horror. I
right,
guess.
yeah. But like, and actually, horror is a perfect example of this, because the interesting thing about horror, and this is another lesson from the world of screenwriting, is that horror is actually one of the best genres for breaking into the industry from the outside, right? Like if you don't
Mm.
have money, if you don't have connections, if you don't have, XYZ to, do a more prestigious quote unquote project, horror is one of those genres where it is, it does have a lower barrier to entry in the sense that it's easy to make competent horror
Mhm.
and pretty much across the board, right? Whether you're talking about movies, video games, books, same is true across all medium.
Yeah,
All
it's a
media.
really good point.
But if you can establish a unique point of view, you can very easily build a following and eventually pivot that following into, hey, now I want to do sci-fi or fantasy or whatever other genre you want to do.
Right.
Maybe even like have kind of transitional fossils right between from horror to whatever else you're doing. But I mean that's a playbook that so many people. I mean, Jordan Peele is one of the best examples of this, right? Like, and so that I think is a perfect example of how having and developing taste is really where the power lies.
Mm-hmm.
And sure, like it's a a lower barrier to entry. Like take that for what it is. Like it's funny. One of my favorite uh, marketing experts in the video indie gaming space says like, just make a horror game. Like find a really simple concept you can do in a weekend, and don't worry about making something of great quality. And it would do it, which I largely agree with, but still find the thing that makes yours unique, right? And
Right.
take
Right.
that extra moment to think through the premise and think, is this a premise that is so stupidly interesting that someone's going to stop scrolling on Steam or itch.io or wherever and be like, whoa, I have to play that, right? Even if it's bad, I have to play it.
Yeah.
Same for movies, right? Ooh, that sounds terrible. Let's go.
Right.
Like
Right.
this is B horror. B horror is like this in a
Yeah.
nutshell.
I mean, that's kind of what you just said. Like, even a 2 out of a 10 will be remembered. You know what I mean? That's still an
Yeah.
enjoyable thing. Like, something's so bad, it's enjoyable,
Yeah.
but there's still people there making it, you know?
And it's the chance, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
whatever else this person is doing, there's that X factor that they bring that I can only get from them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which in my mind is the goal of any creative career. Because
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, and again, it's the kind of thing that is increasingly becoming the only thing that matters. Because if it's trivial to produce something that looks mostly like what you're doing, then it's everything that's unspoken or below the surface that actually separates you in the eyes of your fans and makes
Yeah.
them pull their friends aside and say, "Hey, forget like what I know you like horror. Forget all those guys. You have to read Daniel instead. Here's
Right.
why."
Right. Interesting. Well, that's a really good point. So you've been writing a long time, really.
Yeah.
I mean, what age do you think you started writing at?
12.
Ah,
And I can tell you when it happened. It was I was it was in my music class in 6th grade, and we had our music teacher who he only came in like once a month or so, but one time he came in and was like, "Hey, I want you guys to all write short stories instead of music. That'll be our experiment." And I went and wrote a short story about Destiny, this angelic figure coming and visiting this very shy, awkward young boy. Guess who that was? And telling him he'll go on to do great things. And when I turned that story into class, the music teacher was so moved. And bear in mind, this is a guy in his like late 30s, early 40s. He was so moved by my story that he read it aloud for the whole class.
wow.
And it wasn't just that he chose to read it aloud. It said I could see how moved he was while he was reading it. And that really like unlocked something for me. It's like, wow, if I'm a 12-year-old and I can move an adult with my words
Yeah.
to that level, that's it.
That's incredible, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Man, I wish I had a story like that. My music teacher, I hit her keys one time to drive home. That was my claim to fame in music class. So yours is much more heartwarming. I love that. That's really cool though. Yeah. So you just got that feeling and then you stuck with it and kept writing.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your book.
Yeah.
Let's jump into that. I like that, the description of the book that you sent me spoke to me. I really like, these are things that I think mean a lot to me and I also like to speak about as well. But, you know, the book becomes a meditation on legacy, fatherhood, vocation, and the responsibility of creation itself. Your journey moves from survival mode to a clear sense of purpose, helping the builders of civilization preserve their stories in books that can outlive them. It's also a very deeply personal memoir. So, what moved you to start this book? What moved you to decide I'm going to write this?
It's so funny. I was working with a hybrid publisher who essentially he had a pipeline of clients that wanted books. I stepped in as the ghostwriter, and then I would hand them back to them to do the publishing piece. And at one point, he turned around and said, like, where's your book? Right? Like people are going to wonder, like, if this guy's such a great ghostwriter, where's his book? I'm like, well, I guess I should write one, which is funny because like this will be my first book under my own name. Like, I've written a lot of short fiction, gotten that published. Obviously, I've done everything, but really, this will be my first time publishing a book. And so I sat down and I was like, okay, what do I write about? Right? Like, what sort of book do I write? And
Yeah.
the funny thing is, I had already built a tool. Speaking of AI, I built a custom GPT designed to help people figure out what book should I write.
Wow.
And it's trained on it's not just like, generic, like, what kind of book? It's trained on my philosophy, right? Like,
Mhm.
and I ran a bunch of my friends through it to see, and like I read through all of their chats word for word to see, like, is it asking the right questions? Is it leading people the right way? And like, point by point, every single test I ran, I was like, yeah, like maybe not the exact words I would say, but that's the thought process, right? Like,
Right.
it's guiding people the right way. And so then I was like, I guess I should try eating my own cooking here. Let me run myself through the tool and see what I get. And that's when it started pushing me in the direction of the story about my mom and everything that went down there. And it was the kind of thing, I think, on some level, I always knew I wanted to write about it while it was
Right.
happening. I just didn't know when. I didn't know like what format.
Mhm.
And I certainly would not have guessed that that was the way to go for my first nonfiction book. Like, I honestly, like, if not for that, going through that session, I probably would have jumped to the same conclusion a lot of first time authors do, where it's like, well, it's got to be something more tactical and business focused, and like, here's how to achieve XYZ.
Something to
But
get your name out there first before you open up, and yeah.
right. But by that same token, the same thing I always tell my clients is that the goal of the first book is to establish yourself as a character in the minds of the market, right? Like I was talking
Mhm.
about earlier. And what I realized is that this story will do that better than anything else that I have. Like, this is truly, like, as difficult as it is to talk about these events, this made me who I am.
Right.
And these are like all of my core values put in the ultimate test. And so if I can show that story, and anyone who reads that and gets it, like, of course we should work together. Like, and
Yeah.
if they want to have that same quality in their work, because it's one, like, even with nonfiction books, there's a lot of ghostwriters, and there are plenty of people that will say, like, oh, look, here's an AI that you can prompt and it'll spit out a book in 30 minutes. That's not what I do. Like, I go deep with you and I uncover the story that only you can tell.
Mhm.
And that's exactly what I did to myself.
Right. Right. It speaks to
And
the
so,
authenticity again. Right. Exactly.
exactly. And yeah, I mean, we can dive into more about like what actually is in the book, but yeah, as far as the, like, why I chose to do the book that way, that's why, is that
Yeah.
and there were kind of layers to it. Well, but I ultimately realized, like, this is actually the ultimate example of what of where I want to lead my clients, like what I'm
Mhm.
asking of them. It's only fair that I've done the same myself.
Yeah, that's interesting. I was a chef for many, many years, and that's kind of how I looked at it as well. It's like, I'm not gonna ask you to go clean the bathrooms or go,
Mm.
do this task if I can't even do it myself, you know what I mean? If I don't even know how to do it. So I need to put myself through this first. I think that goes a long way, you know? And your book, man, you talk about vulnerable. You're being vulnerable. You're putting yourself out there. Um, is it cool if we get into the specifics of the
Yeah.
book? Cool with that? Excuse me. Your book begins with finding your mother on the brink of death. How did that moment kind of alter the trajectory of your life, of your inner life, of what you were doing?
Oh man. It's literally chapter one is about that. But it was, so to give it a little more context, this was on Christmas Day of 2018. And um my sister and I had been staying at my dad's place for Christmas Eve, and then that morning we went to go have Christmas with her during the day. Um and we found her just essentially near catatonic, right? Like unable to stand up. She was conscious, but she was basically like her memory would loop every 15 minutes, and we have to like
Mm-hmm.
re-explain what was going on. And she was like bone frail. And what we ultimately pieced together once we got her to the hospital was that she had spent potentially days sitting in the same chair, not eating, not drinking anything. And the way she ended up in that position is that she was an alcoholic.
Mm.
And it was, and this is actually a very common thing. A lot of people don't know this, but especially if it's someone who is excuse me, a relatively high functioning alcoholic later in life, a lot of times they'll get to the point where they're so isolated and broken off from routine that they'll start sitting around and just drinking all day, but eventually they're not even drinking anymore. Like by the time we got her to the
Yeah.
hospital, there wasn't any alcohol in her system because there wasn't anything in her system. And that realized like if we had not gone there that day, like if we hadn't come to visit, and we really were kind of tempted not to because things were already difficult at that point,
Mm.
um, she may not have made it another day.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
that was as soon as I realized that, that's really up against. And the sort of final moment of that chapter is, there's a moment where it's all of us there around the hospital bed, me, my little sister, my aunt, who was my mom's sister, and my now wife, and we were dating at the time. And it just became obvious like somebody has to take the lead here. Somebody has to take point and be the sort of central pillar of coordinating everything that has to happen next.
Right.
And I was like, well, there's no way I'm going to let it be my little sister because she's 5.5 years younger than me. She's, at that point, just starting out in life.
Yeah.
It wasn't fair to my aunts because she had just gone through that with their mom as far as, carrying her to the end of like literally that year, earlier that same
Wow.
year, their mom had passed. Not from alcoholism, but just from general old age in her case.
Mm.
And so it was like, well, then it's got to be me. And I knew that as soon as I made that call, like that was going to dramatically alter my plans. Because at
Yeah.
that point, I had already been planning, I was still working in house as a copywriter, and I was planning to go freelance so that I'd have a lot more time for creative projects and doing other things on the side. And also I'd be able to make more money as a copywriter because like there's a cap on how much you can make in house. But I had to put that off for another year because then all of 2019 was just getting that situation stable and also marrying my wife and trying to like it was this constant battle between like how do I keep my mom stable and give her a fighting chance but
Mm-hmm.
also not lose my life in the process. Like I can't
Yeah.
give everything to her. I have to keep progressing and building the life I want to live because if I don't do that, then I can't help her anymore. Like
Right. Right.
that was such a hard
Mentally,
lesson that
that's a
yeah.
tough line to walk for sure.
And like how do I do all this and stay sane? Like how do I not just become a crying puddle in the corner of the room, which was tempting constantly. I mean, that was a
Yeah.
constant battle. But the thing that people kept telling me at the time, and it really took me sitting down and writing the book to really believe them, was that they saw me being incredibly strong throughout all this, and they were like, "No, you were our rock. Like you're the one that got us through this." And at the time, it just felt like every day was treading water. Every day was just a fight to the death that I barely survived.
Wow.
And so that I think is one of the biggest things. I mean, I know you talk a lot about people with difficult stories, and for anyone in the audience listening to this, if you thought about like writing your story out, I'll tell you from experience, one of the biggest transformational elements of that is it's the ultimate chance to recognize how strong you really were in a way that's really I couldn't do it if it was just me sitting and staring in the mirror, right? I needed to sit and put it in a story and apply the tools of my craft to myself. to finally recognize how strong I was in the middle of all this.
Man, you know, it's interesting because you say, you know, every day you wake up and it was a battle. It was, you know, a fight. You said you touch on alcoholism in the book. You touch on alcoholism, grief, but you also touch on professional delusionment, which I found very interesting. During that stretch, what did survival mode look like, you know, for you day to day? Were you just trying to just kind of box in exactly what had to be done that day and then move on to something else? And like, you know, how did you get through it?
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of, especially for 2019, there were so many, I mean, their whole, the whole first like half of the book is just getting through that first year because,
Yeah.
you know, first we had to get her into, first we tried putting her in a senior living center and having them like restrict her access to alcohol to deal with that at all. But also her memory was still pretty bad. So eventually she ended up going into a memory care facility for people with advanced dementia. And so she's
Oh,
literally
wow.
sitting in the same facility as people who are, you know, in some cases are nonverbal, or who have like, you know, none of them can live independently, right? Like most people in that facility are there for the rest of their lives.
Right.
But she was actually able to make such a strong recovery there that she was able to come out and then go into rehab to make sure she's fully stabilized and then eventually
That's
back to
incredible.
normal life. Yeah.
Yeah.
And she made it to the wedding, right? Like that was one of the biggest
Wow.
wins of that year. And so there were stretches like that where there's just such a flurry of activity and so many different things I have to do that, yeah, like you said, it was just like, wake up, okay, which fire am I putting out today, right? Like, okay, boom,
Right.
go do that, do that, do that. Where it actually was even more difficult was the moments of seeming calm, where after living in that mode for so long, the technical term is like hypervigilance. I was living in massive hypervigilance where like I'm literally just every second waiting for the next fire to erupt.
Mhm. Yeah.
And that is a very difficult, it's so hard to, when you're in that frame of mind, it is basically impossible to plan for the future and make real effort towards your long-term goals because it doesn't feel real. It doesn't feel safe.
Yeah.
It's like,
Absolutely.
if I let my guard down for a second, then I'm going to get like, I can't dedicate the time and focus to this thing because then I'm going to get pulled away.
Right.
And as time went on, eventually I did go freelance and wound up, working with a bunch of different clients. But there's another stretch that I write about in the book where I knew that the copywriting had become something I wasn't aligned with, right? And that had to do with the kind of stuff I was selling, and the kind of clients I was working with. And it was not like I wasn't doing anything like illegal or anything like that, but I just knew that it wasn't something I'd be proud to put my name on if it was my name on the
Mhm.
product, right? And that became so hard to break out of because I was in that survival mode and because it was like, okay, to make that switch to do something more aligned is going to be a huge leap and it's going to take a lot out of me. And I don't know if I can do that when I'm, again, waiting for the next fire to erupt or in the middle of
Right.
cleaning up some other mess. Um, and then when my mom finally passed, there was just such grief, right? Like there was such, I mean, for about a year or two, I was, the best way I can describe it is that I felt like I was in limbo. Like
Mhm.
nothing felt real, or not nothing, right? But it was like there was such a dense fog of fusion. And I'm very lucky that like I had my wife and she was this incredible support and like our relationship was solid. Like that, I was one of the few lights that I had, but everything else just felt like such a blur. Like it was hard to really, again, it was so hard to think long term. Like how can
Yeah, it's hard
I,
to focus.
and that's something too, I think is, one of the things I really hope that I can do with this book is if somebody's in that zone right now, is for one to just meet them there and say, you're not crazy. Like if it feels impossible to imagine a future right now, I get it. I get it. And I'm
Yeah.
not going to sit here, which I think a lot of the personal development space has a bad habit of, directly or indirectly shaming people when it's like, oh, where's your big, hairy, audacious goal, right? Like, where's your big plan for the future? It's like, bro, some people are not even, they can't even imagine 2 days from now. And you're
Right.
asking
They're
them to
just trying to
imagine a
survive
10-year
right
plan.
now.
Yeah.
Right.
But that's not to say that those people can't make progress too, and that they can't achieve their wildest dreams. But we have to respect the stages in the process between, because certainly I was not ready for any, when I was in the middle of that, there was no way you could have got me to sit down and like make a 5-year plan or whatever. Like, dude, I can't right now.
Right.
And actually the things I found most helpful were the people that showed me how to confront that pain dead on. Like one of the big, it's funny, this is a chapter I added to the book after finishing the full draft, because it's like, which by the way, this is another thing you learn is like, there are things you will learn about the book only after you have a first draft done, which again, speed of writing, really important. And there's this whole story I didn't even put in the first draft because I somehow forgot or didn't realize how important it was. But then after finishing the book and taking it to an editor and starting to have these kind of conversations around it, I realized, oh my God, this story is like one of the core blocks here, because I went to a men's retreat in Idaho where they had us like all up in a cabin, doing breath work together and having these like deep,
nice,
essentially like role play sessions where each guy got to bring something he's struggling with, and we'd act out a scene to sort of tackle that idea. And in my little scene, I talked about, my mom was falling down into the void, and like I was trying to like keep my other family members out of it and keep myself out of it. And ultimately the facilitator was like, well, what if you did go into the void? And so we literally had someone sitting on the ground playing the void, and I just sat and I just stared him in the eye. And I just all of a sudden had this moment of incredible calm. And it felt like this cool, refreshing air settle over my skin. And it was like, what was I so afraid of in the void? Like, for me, the void became the space of power. Like, my mom slipped into the void because she was fighting it, because she couldn't accept it for what it was. When I was able to confront it honestly, I discovered that, I mean, the void is the source of life. That's where all creativity comes from. And so I don't need to fear it. If anything, like, I should make it my own. I should be friends with it. And that was something that shifted everything, because instead of running it out, and like, this was, and trust me, that was not an overnight thing, right? I still had to remind myself, to put the story in the book. But when I'm truly in my darkest moments, I just remind myself that pain is trying to teach me something.
Yeah.
It's not here to crush me or destroy me. It's like, no, just go and sit with it and let it tell you what it needs to tell you. See what you can discover there. And without fail, when I'm able to do that, I mean, I wrote whole chapters of the book by going to the void, where I'd be at a point where, like, I don't even forget about the book. I don't even know what I'm supposed to do today, because I'm so overwhelmed with all these other problems. And by just sitting and letting the void talk to me, it was like, there's a whole chapter, boom, done.
Wow.
Type it up in like 30 minutes. Like, and that's something too, I think, is when we first connected, I was so, I felt such a kinship right away. And I think I love what you're doing here, because there is so much power to be found in our darkest moments. And it comes down to how we approach them and how we look at them.
Yeah.
And it goes way beyond just survival. It's like, there's the power to transform in moments like these. And that looks so different from, sitting and wishing and dreaming for some abstract thing. It's like, no, there's something here for you right now when things feel the darkest.
Yeah.
That's the thing I want people to know.
It's beautiful. Yeah, it's so true. And the hardest part too is, when you see the void, like you said, and you even touched on, not numbing yourself out. I mean, I certainly did. My mother passed away, and I immediately numbed myself up for a very long time. And the uncomfortable part is becoming radically honest with what you're feeling, what you're seeing. And like you said, looking at that void. What's interesting too is everybody has a different path to that void. Everybody has a different journey to that, you know? So it's fascinating. Let's talk about, when's your book coming out? You have a date yet?
Not yet.
Can you finish the first draft?
Probably potentially later this year. I was initially looking at trying to do it around my birthday in October, but I think that might be a little aggressive at this point, but we'll see. You'll see me talk about it a lot more.
Yeah. What's life looking like for you right now? How are things? You're a father now, right? Yourself?
Yeah. Got a 2-year-old at home.
Nice.
And that's, I mean, I talk about that in the book too. Like, him being
Yeah.
born, the enormous identity shift that comes with that. But yeah, he's doing great. He's in preschool now, and yeah, it's one of the biggest things I focus on now is it's just making sure I'm making time for him every
Mm,
day. And like our favorite way to do that is like, I always make sure to say goodbye to him before he goes out to preschool in the morning. But then in the evenings, like I'll wrap up at work and then we go for a walk out to, basically just around the neighborhood. And like we can be out there for like an hour, 90 minutes, even 2 hours some days. And I really, some days I'm still carrying, life stress and business stress with me. But
yeah.
most days I'm just there with him, and like I use that to ground myself and be like, this is the thing that will matter to him more than anything.
Yeah.
Is dad was there and dad's with him,
Hell yeah, man. All right. Working title. So you're going to get us a title eventually.
Yeah.
Where can people find you out there if they're interested in your services, your copywriting services, or just reading your work? I can list a bunch of stuff in the episode description itself as well. But if somebody wants to kind of, learn more about you and read some of your work, can they head to?
Yeah, so easiest way to find me is on Facebook and LinkedIn, which we'll have the links for those under here. And also that tool I mentioned, you can use it yourself. I
Oh
built
yeah,
it, so
that's really cool.
yeah. So we'll have a link to that as well. It's called the Book Clarity Engine, and there'll be a link with the instructions for how to use it and get access.
Incredible.
And yeah, those are the main things.
Got a lot going on here, Sean.
Yeah.
Look at you, growing up so fast. So real quick, I just have one more question for you. To you, when you think about the phrase "braving the bright side," what do you think "braving the bright side" means to you?
I'm so glad you asked, because the way I read it was braving the bright side in the sense that it's actually scarier to be on the bright side than it is to be in the
Okay.
darkness,
Yeah.
especially if you've been there a while, right? And huge theme of my book too, right, is like learning to come out of that fog, live life again, and actually feel alive. In some ways, it was harder and scarier than living in crisis mode and living in survival mode. And so, the way I read that is, it takes bravery. It takes bravery to fully live and to let yourself feel joy and to allow the good things in life too, and even to believe that it's out there still, right, when you're in the thick of it. And so
Yeah.
that's why I love the title. I think it's a fantastic title, and I'm so glad you're doing the
Thanks.
show because that's such a huge part of the conversation. Is how do you brave the bright side? It's one thing to brave the dark side. I actually think a lot of that comes down to instincts.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're a hardy species. We like to stay alive, but when it comes to actually living your life, how do you brave that?
Living it honestly and authentically, like you
Yeah.
said. Sean, this has been great, man. I really appreciate you coming by and telling your story and opening up about everything. And like I said, you wear a lot of hats, and they're all
Yeah. Well, thank you.
yeah. Well, keep us posted about the book. Like I said, keep in touch, and then once that book becomes available, or you have a release date, and you're looking for any kind of pre-release signups, send it my way. I'll make sure to blast it everywhere.
Yeah.
And then yeah, then would love a copy of your book, and then I'll give you a copy of my book when it comes out.
Yeah.
Book
Absolutely.
swap, huh?
Hey, yeah.
All right, Sean. Well, listen, thanks for stopping by the bright side today, man. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Daniel. This has been awesome.
Take, yeah, take care, buddy.